Okay, gewaltig. Okay, then we learned what type of paper you wrote it on. It had to be cloth, and then we learned what type of ink you had to use. You had to use an ink that would be wiped out that would be washed out, that would not leave a roshim. We learned Megillah Shakasa B'Ladas Psula because we learned Tyrus from Mishpat. We learned that writing it backwards wouldn't work because it says the Chasav as Allah Sha'ela, it has to be the way it was written in the Torah. And then we learned that you had to have written the Megillah after the Shua was made, the coin was Mashpiyah lady. After that, that's when you write it. And then we learned about writing without sirtut. Now, as far as the shiloh that we discussed at the end, if you're allowed to write in a letter without sirtut, so there are some Rishonim who hold that if it's not ksav ashur, so if it's just like script, it's for sure not a problem. And there are those who hold unless it's for a sefer, it's not a problem. If it's just writing, not for like a sefer Torah. Okay, now let's have a look. Kosva al shnei dafin. If you wrote it on 2 dafin, and there's several pshatim in this. Rashi here says that you wrote it like a sefer, like a sefer Torah. There's different columns. So instead of writing the whole thing in 1 column, because it's not an awful lot to write, you wrote it in 2 columns. Toishba says you wrote it in 2 columns, but the 2 columns weren't connected. There were 2 individual pieces of cloth. And Toishba wants to say that even if you wrote the whole Megillah on 1 cloth, but you wrote 2, and now you have 2 cloths, and you erase the 2 cloths with 1 water, that's also psula. Why? Because Sefer Echad Omer Echbana. Thank you so much. The Torah says 1 sefer, v'loy shnayim u'shloisha svarim, and not multiple svarim. What happens if you wrote kosav ois achas u'mochak ois achas? The kosav ois achas u'mochak ois achas psula. What happens if you wrote 1 letter at a time, and before you wrote the next letter, you washed out the first letter? So there are those who ask, so then you never mochik Shem Hashem. So what's the whole issue of being mochik Shem Hashem? But there are those who learn that could be this means 1 word at a time. It will be psula. The whole thing has to be written as 1, and then it's all nimchak together. Boy Rava, kasav beis megillos lishtei soitos. There's 2 women who are soitos here, and you wrote 1 megillah for 1 soita and 1 for another soita. But together, you together were moichik both of these into 1 kois. Now, what is halacha? Each megillah was written for a specific woman, so it's kosher, even though the waters are mixed. When the mechika is done, it also has to be for this specific woman. And here, you were moichik them both together. And if you hold that you need mechika l'shma as well, what would happen if machkan the base cases? You did each one personally. For 1 woman, you wrote it and you made a mechika in the case A, and for the second woman, you wrote a special megillah and you were mechika in the case B. And then you took these 2 cases, the chazer ve'irvin, and you mixed them together. Now, you need mechika l'shma being va'ika. The mechika was done properly, and now they each drink water. They're not each drinking specifically their water. In other words, it's not clearly defined their water that they're drinking. Even if technically they're drinking their own water in the kais, but it's not clearly defined. The Stipler asks, how could they do this anyway? The Mayim Amorim comes from the Kiyar. You're not allowed to drink from the Kiyar, it's Kodesh. So she's allowed to drink her water. The other one's allowed to drink their water, but I'm not allowed to drink her water. So why isn't there a problem of letting them drink B'chlal? So the Stipler says that drinking Mayim Amorim is not called having a no from Hektish. So that's why there wouldn't be a problem.
If she clean, then she is right.
No, if she's clean, she had enough from the water that she drank. The Yedem's water won't show that she's clean. The only know that she could be having from Yedem's water is that she's drinking it. But I guess it didn't taste so good. Then Tim Saloimar. And if you're going to say halav didok kashasha, she can't drink and mix together. Halav didok kashasha. How about you split them in half. Mahu. Do you say yesh breira or ein breira? Empty Gemara take you. So this shaila of yesh breira ein breira is for sure not the classic shaila of breira. This is not a regular shaila of breira, because as Tosfos is Myrich, Tosfos says this is not regular breira. Regular breira, it's never defined in advance. For instance, one of the examples, the classic examples of breira, is if you buy a barrel of wine and you need to be mafresh shumas and maisros from it, but you don't have enough time before Shabbos to do it, right? So you say the two lug that I'm going to be mafresh after Shabbos, they're truma, and therefore a nicer whatever you're miyachid, and then you take out. So we say through breira to gloy Muslim or Freya that after Shabbos, whatever I'm going to separate, that was the truma, and what I took from this point on was chulun. So there, nothing got lost in it. We're saying breira will work to say this is what was defined. But here, where before the waters were mixed, they were defined. I don't know if breira works there. Because if breira did work there, well, then every time you had Isser mixed into Heter, use breira. Say, this was the Heter. And every time you have an Isser mixed into Heter, just use breira and say, this is the Isser. Elamai, of course, breira would have worked there. There are other shittas who hold that in general, when there's two liquids mixed together, you can never say breira. So therefore, the Rishonim explained the shaila here is not really yesh breira. It just means, is there hakbada from the Torah that the wine that she drinks has to be clearly defined as hers from beginning to end, or not? In other words, will it work or not? But it's not really the shaila of breira. Everything Gemara Teiku, we don't know. Breira. Hishka b'siv. What if she drank out of a sieve? Rashi learns that a sieve is like a hollow reed, a plant that has a hollow center to it that she drank out of. Not a straw, it's a plant. Bishvai is a straw. I like a straw. But there are those who learn sieve, the Messiah Shas brings down, there are those who learn sieve is a sponge. So she soaked up the water with a sponge and she squeezed out the sponge. That's what the sieve means. B'sheferis is a straw, which she drank like a drinking straw. Mao derech shasiya bekach. That derech shasiya, kids drink that way. Women who are wearing lipsticks sometimes use a straw, right? Oh, you ain't derech shasiya bekach. Yeah, inachdami. Is a Gemara teku. We don't know. Yeah, boy Ravashi, a mishbechu. You know, people, the women drink sometimes out of a straw because they don't want to mess up their lipstick. So this woman, she's there in front of everybody. She might want to mess up her lipstick. She might want to drink it. But we learned that they don't allow her to put on lipstick. So. Oh, very good. So the shaila isn't really if it's derech shasiya. There are those who learn that this isn't stop drinking. This is the kohen has to be mashka her. It says v'hishkas isha. Is it considered the kohen being mashka her if they use a straw? So even if normally lakabi drinking arbakoisis, it would be considered derech shasiya. The shaila is, would this be mekayim v'hishka in Sotah? Boy Rabashi, nishbechu mehen v'nishtaru mehen. There's a revius that they start with, and some of it got spilled out. Now there's a little bit left. Is that enough that she could drink from? Now, so tomorrow teku. Let's see how Rashi explains it. No, but the question is, could be, it has to be all there when she drinks it. Let me see if, no, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say it. Here. Does Tosfos speak about it? I'm sorry? A revius? A lug is 6 eggs. No, not a lot. Remember we said according to revius less, right? You told me that. According to revius less, it's only revius because there's less sapta, right? Because we told you only wrote 1 and 2 psukim. Amar B'Seira, Amarav. Beis Shavuos Hamuris B'Sotah. Lama. So let's look at the psukim again. The psukim again are listed off. There's 2 always. So let me just read it inside, because we're going to need to see it inside to get an appreciation of how the Gemara handles this. So the Gemara says the first thing is Vishbi HaKoyin, Vishbi Isa HaKoyin, The Amar El Isha in La Shachav Ishaishach in La Sotah Tumah Tachas Ishech Yinaki B'mei Amor Mamor Meila Va'at Ki Sotah Tachas Ishech V'chidit Meis Ayit in Ishbach Shechavta B'val De Ishech. Then she's mushba. That's one klala. Then it says again, Mishpia Kohen Isha B'Shvu Sa'Allah V'Amar HaKohen Isha Yitna Shem Oisach LaAllah V'Lashvu B'Soich Amech. So it sounds like the first one didn't have an Allah, the second one had an Allah, right? And then it says, Uva Maimarim, then she drinks. The pasuk later she drinks. So Zok to Gemara, these two Shavuos that are here, Lama. Achas Kodim Shenimcha Megillah, one is said before the Mechika, the Achas Lachas Shenimcha Megillah. Pray to Gemara, I'm asking for the Rav, that doesn't make sense. Tarvayu Kodim Shenimcha Megillah Ksivan. After you read the Psukim, both Psukim are referring to before the Nimcha Megillah. So you can't say that's what these two Shavuos are about. Ella Amarava, the Gemara is going to have 3 tries before it resolves this. Amarava Acha Shvua Sheyeshi Ma'ala. One Shvua has an Allah with it, as we saw in the pasuk. The second one actually. The Acha Shvua Sheyeshi Ma'ala. Hey Chidami Shvua Sheyeshi Ma'ala. What does it mean, a Shvua with an Allah? Amarabamim Amarav. The Kohen tells her, "Must be any Alecha Shalei Base. Make a Shvua that you were not mitam." She'im nitmas, because I want to inform you, she'im nitmas, if you did become tamei, yaviu beich, these terrible things are going to happen. The fact Gemara, that cannot be what a Shavua Sa'Allah is. Why? Because Amar Rabba Allah Luchuda Kaima, Ushvu Luchuda Kaima. Here, what you described, we just described, is a lady makes a Shavua that she wasn't Chayte, and then we warn her that if she was, she gets an Aveira. How is that a Shavua Sheyeshi Ma'Allah? The Allah is just a standalone curse in the event that she was chayte. Although Amar Rabba mashbi'eni alecha shem nitmas yavayu bech. I'm making you a shvur that if you were metame, these yisurim should happen to you. So Dr. Amar Bachi, that doesn't work either. Allah ika shvur leka. There's only an Allah. If you're making a shvur, I don't know how you could swear that this should happen to you. That the Rebbeinu Shalom happening, but if she's just making a shvur, this should happen to me. That's only a no, not a shvur. Lamar Rabashi, what it means is mashbi eni alecha shaloi nitmas. The im nitmas sheboyibach. I'm making mashbi you that you didn't metama, and if you were, these yusurim should happen to you. So that's right. The difference is shem v'im, and although it sounds like a subtle little difference, the difference is very clear. Shem just means I am Agavarcha informing you that there's going to be an Allah. Ve'im means you're swearing to accept this Allah. Although it seems like a subtle difference, it's really a very serious difference. Okay, Gewaltig. So now we have the Shvua and the Shvua Sa'Allah. The Shvua that has an Allah wrapped into it. Zog to Gemara. Al-Mahi Oimeres, Amen, Amen. Right? The Torah says, Amar Isha, Amen, Amen. Twice Amen. So Zog to Mishnah, Amen al Ha'Allah, and Amen al Shavua, and she's being masking to many more things than just that. Amen Me'isa, I'm accepting upon myself all of this, from this suspected naif, Amen Me'ishacher. I'm also making a Shvua that I wasn't Mizana with anybody else. Amen Shaloi Setisi Arusa Nesua. I was never chayte even when I was in Arusa, or even if I was in Nesua, I was never ever chayte. Nesua really is only Mishachar. I was never chayte at all. Now, not only from this Kinyan Stira, any other time, even when I was in Arusa before our Nesua. Well, that's a good shaila. It's a good shaila because in fact the Shavua comes first. I don't know. That's a good. I think I saw someone who asked that actually. A Sotah does not get warned. She didn't have a straw. If she had a straw, if there were Adam in a straw, she would get chenek. It means she would get the other. Yeah, of course, we're speaking that all that already happened. Oh no! Once there's kinoi and stira, then he could make her swear about every other man too. Sotah allows for that. And in those cases, there was no kinui in that. That's right. There was only any other man involved. In fact, there was no kinui. So Moti asked, I saw, I think the Mesivta brings down, maybe the archer asked that. It should be Omen al Shua first, because that was made first. Okay? V'shemeres Yovim uchnusa. Zokt the Rishonim, Shemeres Yovim uchnusa means if he didn't marry her as a single woman, rather she was the almana of his brother. So while you're a Shemeres Yovim, she swears that she wasn't Mizana. Uchnusa anytime after he made you. Amen Shalom Nitmesi. Amen that she was not Metama. Nitmesi Yavoyubi. And if I became Tama Yavoyubi, which is her being Mekabel to Allah. So let's see Rashi. Amen Shalom Nitmesi. Maybe it'll address Moti's question. Amen Shalom Nitmesi Hainu Kabbalah Shavua. Vim Nitmesi Yavoyubi Hainu Kabbalah As Allah. Kederech Shesh Bia. Kida Amar Lo Begemara Mashbieni Alecha Shla Nitmes Em Nitmes Yavoyabach. V'Hainu Perisha the Amen Ala Shavua. Amen Ala Allah the Tanya Beresha. You notice how Rashi changes the order here? So, because when the Gemara, when the Mishnah elaborates on their amens, amen shalom tzmeis, it taka the shua first. So that makes it even more interesting. I'm not. Does Archibald say anything on here? Okay, so Reb Meir now comes along and makes it even more exciting. Reb Meir Omer, Amen Shalom Nitmesi, Amen Shalom Etma. So she's saying, Zok Rashi, Shem Titma La'achar Zman, let's say she's innocent here, but sometime in the future, she's Mizana. Zok Rashi, Mayin Ma'arin Oisa La'achar Shetitma. That means once she drinks that water, if she'll ever be Mizana again, she's going to be in for an awful surprise.
Now,
I'm sorry? Later. Yeah, no, Avada, the Gemara discussed, but all the speaking, there's no Havamina, even though the Gemara clarifies it. They ask on the Gemara, there was a Havamina that she'll blow up now for an affair that she never did? How you talking? There's no thing she gives Hashem punishes someone now for an affair that they never did. So there's a shadow why the Gemara, you have to clarify. But the Gemara clarifies, Avada means if she's Chayte later on, she'll blow up. Hakoil Shovin, Shein Mas Neima, well, I guess it stays in her system. It stays in her system. The Gemara used a lotion. She like gurgles it up. It gurgles up. It stays in there and it gurgles up with her chest and it starts all over again. Zok the Gemara. Zok the Mishnah. Hakol Shavin Shein Mas Neima Loyal Kodim Shettesaris. He can't say that if you were Mezana even before you were in Arusa as a Panuya, you should also blow up. That he doesn't have the right to. V'loy al achar shetes garish, and there's a little bit of a question here on the Girsa, so I'm going to just explain. I'll read the words and then I'll explain it. V'loy al achar shetes garish, after he divorces her, how would it be relevant? Nistira la'achar v'nitmas v'achar kach echzira loy hayamasnim. Meaning he divorces her. And after he divorces her, he's mizana with somebody as a pnuya, and then he goes and marries her again. So if she was mizana in between the two marriages, that he cannot have it at night, and that wouldn't be also for him to remarry. That is the halacha being machzor grushasoi. That's only if she was married to somebody else. If she was nevelish, if she was mizana with somebody else, that doesn't ask for him from marrying her again. It only asks him from marrying her again if she was married to somebody else. Because if it would be also for her to marry her again, then the mind wouldn't be biting her anyway, because then he's not menukah ma'avon. The mind is only biting if he's menukah ma'avon. Zaklal. Kol shetibayel v'loy tehei asureloi. Any bia that if she would do this bia, it wouldn't answer her to her husband, that he can't add to the equation. He could only add to the equation bias that happened or that will happen that will in fact answer her to him. That's the litmus test. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Omer Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna said, Shemeres Yovim Shezinsa. So Shemeres Yovim, the says Reuven was married to Rivka, and Reuven didn't have any children. He died. And Shimon, it's a man's womb. Huge. Yeah. So Shemeres Yovim Shezinsa. A Shemeres Yovim, well, a man doesn't have mamash free will, because any Sotah that blows up, the man who she was mezana with blows up the chomokim shehu. So it's not mamash. If he was mezana with a pnuya, he's safe. But if he was mezana with an eshishish and there was kinati, he would blow up. Now I wonder if only the boil of the stira would blow up, or all of the people in the Gilgul will also blow up. Yeah, could you imagine how many people there are going to be begging her to be moida? Okay. Our Rav Hamnuna, Shemeres Yovim Shezinsa. Yeah. Our Rav Hamnuna, Shemeres Yovim Shezinsa, Asura Liyavama. A Shemeres Yovim, there's only an Isser Lav, right? It says Loisia Isha Mesa Chutza. There's a Lav for Shemeres Yovim to marry without chalitza. So what if a woman who's only usher with a lav, would that create an isser to Yavama? Zaktamar also Yavama. It's usher to do even on a shemer of nozitza. Now normally we say that if kedushin is in toivis, if the vlad's a mamzer, that will usher her to her husband. But this is merely chayv elavet. So Zaktamar mimai. How does Rav Hamnuna know that shemer yom sezinsa, even though it's only a lav, that she becomes usher to her husband? We know it from our Mishnah, which means his Gilgul shvur works even while she was a shemeres yovim. If you're going to say this woman becomes usher to the yovim, you should machi masni ba'adah, because that's what the Mishnah said. He could only add to the shvur nusses that would have ushered her to him. How could he include that in his Tanai of his Gilgul Shvua? But nan zaklal, the Mishnah fears us that the litmus test is kol she'ili tivoil v'loy say asur, any woman who would have done his nus, and this nus would not have made her also to her husband. So since our Mishnah says that rule, and our Mishnah says he could say shemesh yovim, it must be that there's an exception, even though normally chayve lavin do not create an isser to the Baal, kedushin toifis, and just a chayve lavin, there's a special halacha specifically to shemeres yovim that she becomes usher to the shemeres yovim. In Marov they said there is no raya. We don't pass like Rav Hamnuna, and there's no raya. We actually do pass like Rav Hamnuna. Taishus is masber, but at least our Gemara is saying is in Marova they held halacha not like Rav Hamnuna. So how do they explain our Mishnah? That's going according to Rabbi Kiva, who has a different shita about what type of women is there no kedushin types. Because Rabbi Kiva holds every chayve lavin is kedushin is not typhus, and the vlad is a mamzer. The Omar ain't kedushin typhus, a chayve lavin. Not only shemeres yovim, every chayve lavin. If you try to be mekadesher, the kedushin is not typhus. Umash v'laki erba, and the child's a mamzer. According to Rabbi Kiva, it's not shver why he could include the period of time where she was shemeres yovim, because she's like a regular erba during that period of time. But you don't have a raya according to us, who only hold that chayve krisus, kedushin and not typhus. You don't have a raya that there's a special halacha for a shemeres yovim. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah, ma'u sheyisna adam al nisuin harishonim. What does it mean nisuin harishonim? Meaning he's married to this woman for a second time. So Rashi is going girsha v'chsira v'kin lavanistira. So Reuven was married to Rachel. They divorced, and then they remarried. And in the second marriage, it was kinu and stira. Could he say, I also want you to blow up if you were mezana during our first marriage? Well, he made Yibum. And in his Tanai, not only Shemesh Yavim Kanusa, but even before you became a Shemesh Yavim, even when you were married to my brother. Mao. Zokt Gemara, let's look at the litmus test. Toshma, Zaklal, Kol Shetivoil, Veloy Tehe Asurloi, Loy Mastima, Hasira, Akanami de Masna. If it would have caused this, sir, Avada can make it nine. So if in fact she was Mizana during the first marriage, Avada she would be also to him. So therefore he can include that and he could make the Gilgul Shavu on that. Or if she was Mizana when she was married to his brother, there would have been no Yibam, right? There would have been Isser and Gans. So therefore, the Gemara concludes that those things he could add to the Gilgul Shvua, Shema Mino. Rab Meir Omer, Amen, Shalom Mesi. I forgot to speak on something very important. This is the Makar, Rashi brings down that this is the Makar of Sotah. Sotah is the Makar for Gilgul Shvua. That once you're making somebody swear, someone owes you a Shvua, you can add other Shvuas to the Shvu as well. Well, he doesn't have a right just to go over to his wife and say, you must swear to me that you were never Mizana. But once I'm allowed to add to the Shvu. By Shaiman, he makes extra Shvuas. That's how you did Gilgul. Where do we know Gilgul Shvua? We know it from here. Yeah. Tanya, we learned. Like by a Shaimer, he has to swear that he wasn't Peshay. If he's a Shaimer Chidam. Once you make him swear he wasn't Peshay, you can make him swear that he wasn't Shalach Yad. Right? Tanya. Shalach Yad. Oh, so that's Mefurish. Okay, so there could be there's other Shvuas now. Yeah, we're going to learn, but we're going to learn the Zikin soon. We're going to get to that. Yeah. Zok to Gemara. Tanya, we learn. Loy kisha Amar Rab Meir. Amen shaloi etma. Shem titma mein boikin oisamay achshav. Don't misunderstand Rab Meir to say that she's going to blow up now if Klap Shmaya Galya that in the future she'll be Mizana. Elo lechasha titma mai ma'arin oisa uboikin oisa. And the Rishonim asked, well, you need Gemara to tell me that she doesn't blow up now for an Avera. She didn't do yet. So what does it mean, Mayim Arin Oisa? Rashi actually describes how this works. Rashi says, the water comes back up into her throat. So I think the lotion that the Archduke is she gurgles back up. I think he used the word gurgle. It's like she brings it back up like chewing your cud. It comes back up and then the whole system starts. Okay. Kabaltik. Zok to Gemara. Boy Ravashi. Mao sheyisna adam al nisum achroinim. What does it mean nisum or achroinim? So Rashi explains. Rab Meir, according to Rab Meir, the Amar Masna Allah Osid. According to Rab Meir, who holds you a lot to be Masna on the future. Ma'u sheyisna ima the Gilgul Shvua. Could he make in the Gilgul Shvua that if this marriage doesn't work out, and we're getting along great over here, I have you here by Sotah, if I end up divorcing you, and then I end up remarrying you, will the Mayim HaMa'arim work for that as well? Okay. Then there's a whole shaila if someone's moichel on kinoi, so it doesn't work anymore. So the question is, if a guy ends up divorcing his wife after kinoi and stira, is that a mechila or not? So Tosfos actually brings down, we might as well just look at Tosfos very quickly. You should bring from the Yishalmi. So the question is, Girish, if he divorces her, is it Kamisha Mochel? Hechavida. Kinola, Vigirish, what was the case? He made kinoi and then he was Megarish her. Hechzira, he took her back Venistira. If you hold that when he divorces her, it's like he was moichelit. He'll have to make a new kinoi when he marries her back again. But if Gershon doesn't mean he's moichel, then ain't tzarech lekanis lapam shniya. Avalom kinoi v'nistra. But what if there was kinoi and stira in the first marriage? The yodaba, the girsha. I'm not sure what the yada means. And he divorced her. Vichzira, and then he married her again. And if he knew that he did it, he can't marry her again. She's ushered him. So I'm not sure what the Yodaba means. Vichzira, Vinistera, and then she made stira again. Then Shashasa, V'lebatko Oisa Hamayim, and then she drank and the mayim was not Vaidaker. Tahiri, do you say it means she's tired? It's a raya that she's tired. I mean, achar sheina mayim boitkin isha tameya she's tamei basur levesa. So, in fact, in these shilas, I believe the Rambam paskins that these are boys to leave. And then the Rambam says that if she ends up, the Rambam says that if she ends up drinking, she's mutter to her husband. So the shaila is, don't we say since there was kinoi and stira, so now it breaks her cheskes kashrus, so therefore she's a suffix. So if you don't have a clear answer in the Gemara as to whether or not these Gilgul Shavuos are good, so how could the Rambam paskin that if she actually does drink and she doesn't blow up, that she's mutter l'bayla? That's one of the shalos asking the Rambam. So the noise of Kalim, our masbir, is that really she had her cheskos kashrus all along. It's only because we say it's reglaim l'davar, since there was kinui and stira, so there's reglaim l'davar, that's why we asked her to her husband. But it's not really breaking the cheskos kashrus. It's that reglaim l'davar. The suffix whether or not drinking works is enough to eliminate the reglaim l'davar to put her back on her cheskos kashrus. But anyway, let's see what the Gemara says later. So the question was, he wants to include in the kinoi al nesuim achrayim. So what is Allah? Do you say hashta mia lo yasir le? Do you say that now she's not ushered him? Idilma zimnin de megarish law. If he divorces her, and he marries her again, and then she's mizana, that would answer her to him. Tashma akel shav, and everybody agrees. Lahaya masna ima loy al koidem shetesaris, not on a time before the erison, but loy al acher shetes nistira le'echad v'nitmas v'achakach yachsirena. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me see the lashon abach. I'm getting a little bit confused with reading this. Zok the heilige beis, the bachen beis. So the zgash v'tister le'echad v'titma. So let me just read this inside to read it properly. Hakol shav and shloy masnima loy al kodim shetesaris v'loy al acher shetisgarish v'tister le'echad v'titma v'achach yachsirena. So he gave her a get while she's a penuya. She was nistera with a third party, and then he married her back. That's lahaya masna. That's what our Mishnah says, right? That's quoting our Mishnah that the mayim will not be boidig her for znush that she would do after he divorces her before he remarries her. Why? Because that doesn't answer her. However, we could be medayik from the Mishnah that hayach sirena v'sitma, but what if she's mizana after he takes her back? Hachanami demasni. You would be able to include that shmamina, because our Mishnah only excludes what's not included if she would be mizana when she's a pnuya in between the two marriages. Mashma, that znus that she would do in the second marriage after he took her back, which in fact would answer her to her husband, that would be included. Tanu Rabbanim, Zois Tayras Aknois. It says in the end of the parsha of Sotah, Zois Tayras Aknois. I'll read it inside. Zois Tayras Aknois, that's your sister, Isha Tachas Isha, Vinitma. Zok to Gemara. Malamed, we have a three-way machlokes over here. Malamed Shah Isha Soisa Vishoina. A woman could drink and drink again. And we'll see under what circumstances she would drink again. Rabbi Yehuda Zois is Mamayit. She'ena Isha Soisa Vishoina. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, we say Eina Isha Soisa Vishoina, but Maisa, there was a story. The Heid Lefanenu Nechunya Chayfer Sichen. Nechunya, who was a tzaddik, he used to dig boiros for water to service the Oil of Regalim. When they would come up, he wanted them to have water to drink. So he was Moshe Nevish and he dug boiros for them. So it's similar to Shmuel Lerman, right? He always has nash for the people coming to learn. That same type of if Shmuel would have lived in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, instead of giving out candies and nash, he would be digging boiros so that the Oil would have water to drink, right? So anyway, that's right. With ice. That a woman did drink and then she went through it again. We accepted as edus b'shnei anoshim. So b'shnei anoshim means the husband was mekana her with John, and she was social with John, And then at a later time, she was soiser with Bob, and he was mekaner again. So that's what it means trying to be soiser. The Tanakama. No, it's not a different husband. We're going to soon see. The Gemara discusses another husband. This means another boyel. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm making a mistake. Shnei Nashim Rashi says beferish. And Meis Baila Zeh to Hishka, then this is La'achar V'kinla. So I'm sorry, I'm mixing it up. Not a different boil, a different bow. So the Eidos of Rav Nechunya Chai V'sichen was after she divorces one husband, she went and she married another husband, and she could. So a woman technically can go through the process 2 times if it's 2 separate husbands. So we have 3 shittas, and we're all a little fuzzy exactly what these 3 shittas are. So we're going to go through them now. The Gemara is going to go through them very clearly. But I just want to add, which we've already seen, that Zois is a miyut and Toiras is a riboy. So Zois says this shouldn't have the process of Sotah, and Toiras is inclusive that this should have the process of Sotah. And the whole machlokes, the 3-1 machlokes, is going to be what you apply the miyut to exclude from drinking, and what you apply Toiras to include in the drinking. So Zok the Gemara, the Tanakama nami yaksiv Zois, the Tanakama who says that ein Shoysa v'Shoyna, Aitza Zois, Rabbanan Basroi, and the Rabbanan Basroi who hold that you never drink nami yaksiv Toiras. There's a riboy. So how do you apply the riboy and the miyut? Amar Rabba, let's go through it. The Gemara is bringing that up, even though nobody quoted it now. Correct. That's why I introduced it, because it wasn't introduced until now. Everybody uses Zois and everybody uses Toiras. Question is how. And now the Gemara is going to break it down and clarify each of the 3 shittas. So Amar Rabba, be'ish echad de boil echad. If it's one ish and one boil, meaning there was kina and stira with John, and then they went through the whole process, and then a year later, again, there was a kina and stira with John. So the halacha is the chula amaloi pligi. Everybody agrees the eina isha shoysha v'shoyna. So right away, everyone should ask me, what do you mean? We already said that she'll blow up if she was on again. What? Oh, gewaltig. If he didn't make the night, it's a push the case. He forgot to do it. He had a right to add it to the Gilgul rule, and he didn't do it. Yeah, that's one of the Meforshim answer. Others answer where maybe at the time he did an aveir afterwards. He did an aveir, and he wasn't knocking me oven. So let's say after this whole first parsha of Sotah, he was mizana. So now he's not knocking me oven. Now the mayim amar boitik anymore, and then he did tshuva. So would you do it again? That's one of the cheaters today. But the most pushed answer is what you said, that maybe he didn't make the Gilgul rule, right? That's right. That's right. So Dr. Gemara, the chul alma loy pligi to any shayshim. Everybody agrees if it's the same husband and it's the same suspect, ain't shayshim. So for sure you can apply Zois to that. Zois excludes this situation from drinking the second time. Good, right? The chsiv, it says in the pasuk, Zois. Now b'shnei anoshim b'shnei boil. If Ruvain was mekana his wife from John, and then they divorced, and then Shimon was mekana his wife from Bob, everybody agrees. The question is a hybrid case. There's 2 hybrid cases. Or those are the 2 ones that are in the sub. So now we can go through the 3 shittas that we have. Hanakama Savar, the Hanakama says, Toiras is l'ribuye kulhi. All of the cases, all of these 4 cases, do shoysa v'shoyna v'shoysa, except for one of them. Zois l'muta ish echad u'boyal echad. That was the first shita. Rabbanan Basroyu, who says you never ever are shoysa v'shoyna. Sabar zois l'muta kuli. Toiras is l'ribuye shnei anoshim u'shnei boyal. Rabbi Yehuda comes up the middle. Zois l'muta tarti and Toiras is l'rabbis tarti. Zois l'muta tarti is ish echad u'boyal echad or ish echad u'shnei boyal. Those cases you don't drink again. Toiras is l'ribuye tarti shnei anoshim uboyel echad, or shnei anoshim ushnei boyel. So you might ask me, why does he say that Zois excludes ish echad ushnei boyelim? Let's say it excludes shnei anoshim uboyel echad, right? Because it's also a hybrid case. Zokt Rashi, Sephora is that one person shouldn't be able to be mashke his wife twice, which means the ish echad even ushnei boyelim should. Why? Zokt Rashi, a very poshut to Sephora. Let's look. Let's look 4 lines from the bottom of the Rashi in the last parak. Even the kinolek kfar, but nimtus nakia. He already did this once, and she came out clean. She was makana her from John, and she came out clean. So he was suspicious, maybe because he's too paranoid. So therefore, near hadavar she'adam kantaranu. He's obviously a guy who is too makbid on things. He's paranoid, right? And therefore, umischaven laknita, and could be he's doing it just to chepper. So he loses his credibility. So therefore, we don't let him be mashka's wife a second time, even if it's another suspect. Loishna michshad rishon, loishna mayacher. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we finished the parak. Hadin b'neder, hadin lachayamevi, hadin lachayamevi, hadin lachayamevi. Right, so Moti says that this Shiloh is only Nageya if he didn't say that tonight. Because the Mefarshim asked, wouldn't she have blown up automatically? Right. So Moti gave one hechatim of where she wouldn't have blown up. The Rishonim offer others as well. Yeah, but I guess it's a stressful time, so it could be people make mistakes. And it's funny because the husband's not mashpia her, the Kohen's mashpia her. So maybe the Kohen had his eyes on her, so he didn't want to tell her shalayitma. That's all. Okay, Gavaltik, so let's stop here. That's right.